At this time, I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? Okay. We have a full agenda this evening, so we'll be moving along rapidly on those things that don't take a whole lot of discussion and certainly spending time on those issues that do. First item then would be consider the approval of the minutes. We had a regular council meeting on December 1st. We had a truth and taxation meeting on December 3rd. We had a special council budget workshop on December 3rd also. We had a joint city council and hospital board meeting on December 8th, and we had a special budget workshop on December 10th. So the council does have the minutes of all of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time? Move approval. Second. Motion by Mike, seconded by Dan to approve without correction. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. We have several public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is to consider the 2009 mayor and council wages. Our city charter does require that each July that the council discuss and set the wages for the mayor and city council for the next year. That was done this past July. In light of the budget issues facing the state, and ultimately that will impact the city, we will, the public hearing was called for to reconsider that action. So I'll call on Dennis, are you going to take this, or Ben?
Either one, I guess I can certainly address it as you indicated.
I'll call on Dennis to conduct the public hearing.
Purpose of the public hearing, several council members wanted this matter brought back, as you indicated, Mayor, to address pay increases. As indicated pursuant to Charter Section 202.07, you addressed it in July. You approved a pay increase in July to be effective January of 2009. As you indicated, in light of state and city budget issues, several members wanted this matter brought back on. So the issue to be addressed here is, well, what do you do with that? Do you keep the pay increase as is, or do you forego any increase and reinstate the current pay level and continue that into the next year? That's the one issue to be considered.
Okay. So with that, to open up, this is a public hearing. Any public comment, either from the council or from the audience? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. I'll now entertain a motion to set the council wages, mayor and council wages without increase.
I would make a motion that we would not take an increase for 2009, but set it as the 2008 salary.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan. Discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Jane, you have that vote? That motion passes. Agenda item number 3 is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the wastewater user rate for fiscal year 2009. We'll have a public hearing, then following the public hearing, we'll consider the resolution that would revise the user rates. I'll call on City Engineer, Director of Public Works, Glenn Olson, to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Annually, we do this review. This one is a little bit different than the ones that we've done in the past, where we did not have Springstead do an updated analysis of the user rates. We We believe that it was an expenditure of about $5,000, and at the point in time that we looked at doing it, we thought that we could defer that until 2009 to do the review for 2010. Some of the items that would be changing on that review would be like the capital projects, the commitments that we have for those, and actual operational expenses. But we thought with the reductions that we had pretty much across the board, we could certainly get by for a year without doing that extensive report prior to 2009. So utilizing the 2007 report for 2009, the recommendation by Springstead was to go forward with a 4% increase across the board. We did show an average residential rate charge was about 27 cents a month increase for 800 cubic feet of water used per month. So we got that information from Marshall Municipal Utilities for what that average was. Another question that was asked during the procedure of bringing this forward was whether or not the residential and commercial rates were the same, and yes, they are. The rates are the same across the board, and then the industrial users have their own rate structure, so that is the same for those two. You can see a summary also of the rates that we've had from 2004, showing what we've utilized for increases. So we are recommending the recommendations that came by Springstead in 2007 for that increase. You can also see in the summary that was done for the wastewater, and I'm just looking for that in order to produce that positive net balance, we would need to have that through 2012. If you want to extend, if there would be any other adjustments, then you would be extending that period of time that they believe is necessary to bring you to a good standing. Yeah, if there's any other input, we'd certainly take it at this time.
Okay, at this time I'll open up for public comment as part of this public hearing, either from the council or from the audience.
A couple other items. Bob Van Moore is here as superintendent from the wastewater department. Letters and meetings were scheduled by Bob with the significant industrial users in the discussion. And we had the same discussion with the users that we've had here with other issues. You know, the costs of things, but the value of having that wastewater system there and keeping it a good, viable system is important. One of the significant users, a username is ADM. They had concerns that we had brought up about a year ago about collection versus treatment, the costs involved with doing that, and that will be a discussion in our wastewater user charge reviews that we had done with Bolton and Mink. We've got drafts back. The second draft came back for review, so that will be one of those things at least we'll have as a discussion point for whether or not we would want to separate collection and treatment across the board. Right now we don't in our structure of charges, but in their case, and I'll bring this up as kind of a spokesperson for ADM because it's important to them, they essentially have their own system that discharges through a piece of our system directly to our wastewater treatment plant. They also contribute about 20% or 25%? 20?
The actual load is more than that. Revenue source is about 21%.
About 21% of our total revenue. So we want to make sure that we're responsive to that user, like we are to all users, but that's a real large contributor to the viability of our system. And so we want to be treating everyone the same, but we want to be receptive to suggestions that a large contributor might have.
Okay.
So,
thank you. I'll open it up now for public input as part of the public hearing from either the council or members of the audience that are here for this public hearing.
Glenn, when we talked earlier this year, we talked about looking at a ready to serve fee instead of a base fee, which wouldn't include any gallons of service, and then going from there so we can eliminate part of that problem with ADMs. That's still part of that whole thing that Springstead's looking at?
Yes, it is. And MMU has already implemented their ready-to-use charges, I believe, and not just calling it a base charge or a minimum charge. And there's certain qualifications that you must use to reduce that to zero. There still are qualifications that you can get a zero bill, but it's laid out. And we would want to follow that exact procedure if in fact we go to a readiness to use charge, because we do build them together. And we are heading that direction in our recommendation in January, February, whenever we get together on that.
Would that be for a 2010 start on?
Yeah. We could certainly start it sooner, but we want to do that in conjunction with MMU.
Okay.
Other comments as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 4 is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the surface water management utility rates for fiscal year 2009. Once again, we have a...
If we could back up for just a second and do the resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. We will consider the resolution that would adopt the wastewater user rates. The council does have that resolution before them. Are there questions about the resolution?
Make the motion to adopt the resolution. Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry, to adopt the resolution revising the wastewater user rates for 2009. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Now we'll move to the public hearing on the surface water management utility rates. And once again, we'll have the public hearing following the public hearing. Then we'll consider the resolution adopting the rates. Once again, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one includes a recommendation for a 14% increase in surface water management utility rates, and that's true. It's a 14% increase, and it comes out across as being that. The dollar amounts, however, you have to understand those as well. We did include 3 items for the council. The proposed resolution, the Springstead report that was done also in 2007, same explanation as I gave on the wastewater, as well as the summary of the 2008 to 2009 surface water management utility billings. And you can see between 2008 and 2009, we had approximately 85 of those extra parcels between $0 and $10, which is about 88% of the total number of 4,860 accounts that we have. You do have what I consider to be large accounts when you get over $100, and there's about, I'll say 100 of those. And those do receive that same 14% increase. If you look at the dollar amounts for the increases, you'll see about a 38 cent increase per month in the residential household, and that would be, it'd be probably $2 or less, and well, it's going to be $1.40 for all of the 40,000 parcels per month. And I don't think that's been the area that we've been really looking at as far as impact. In the larger users, and I did pick some of those out, in the $1,000 plus ranges, you have like Burlington Northern and the university system. You have fairly large land owners, and theirs are divided generally, if they're developed, into developed and undeveloped portions. so they pay a higher rate for the areas within their large properties that are developed, and then like the ag rate for those, or undeveloped rate for those undeveloped properties. The $500 to $1,000 users are the school system gets involved with that. Minnesota Department of Transportation, ADM, there again, ADM has a lot of property that might not be developed, so that's split. Marshall Square Shopping Center, almost all roof and parking lot in that property. Marshall Municipal Utilities, JR&R2 LLC on 1420 East College Drive, or 1101 East Main, I'm sorry. McLaughlin and Schultz, some fairly large Shopco, large parking lot, large roof area, Hy-Vees, Schwann Shared Services, Kmart, US Bank. Those are the biggest owners that we have, and would be, well, you multiply their rate times 14%, and that's what it is. It's based on a very detailed technical analysis of properties, and we would recommend the approvals according to Springstead's report. And if you look at Springstead's report, it shows us in the 07 coming to amount over under a goal to be breaking even at about 2012. This again is without the significant projects that we know we need to schedule for Tiger Lake and the industrial park. So I would be cautious about reducing it at this time.
That's without those projects?
That's without those projects.
Okay, at this time then, thank you, Glenn. We'll open up for public comment as part of the public hearing, either from the council or from the audience. Mike?
Glenn, when did we start the surface water management? This is about the 4th year?
Yeah, that's it. I'd have to get the exact date. We've been working on it for about 6.
I have a real problem with the economy the way it is, everything else. I don't care how many dollars. We're talking 14%. This is at least the 3rd year that we've raised it 14%. Now, we existed as a city for 100 years without any surface water charges. And all of a sudden, 5 years ago, we decided to put it in place to help with some of these projects rather than take it out of the general fund. But if necessary, I'm going to vote against the entire budget tonight if we can't take and view those separately, because I will never vote for a 14% increase for the 3rd or 4th year in a row. It's just ludicrous the way things are going. Yes, we may have to take some more from the general fund, or maybe we have to postpone for a year. But 14% increases up through 2012, I'm not going to do it.
In the public hearing, other comments as part of the public hearing? Either from the council or from the members of the audience.
I had a question for Glenn. That, before we started the surface water program, where they started to collect for that to pay for replacement of storm sewer services that are being replaced, where did the funds come from that replaced storm sewers? Was it part of an assessment program, or is it part of a...
Yep, and Tom might be a better person to answer that question, because yes, I believe it was general fund, and that's why we postponed projects like on 6th Street, Tree Streets, East Hill, Marsh, Hill Street, until there was a funding source available. So yes, it would be general fund.
So it's
There was
either through
assessments, general
taxes,
fund.
either assessed through taxes
Yeah.
increased, or assessments to the people that had the streets.
That's correct.
Other input as part of the public hearing?
Yes, and part of the reason the expenses look so high on certain items is, for example, street sweeping was always street department expenditure. As soon as this fund became available, stormwater treatment, bang, we moved all of the street cleaning expenses to this fund. That's why we're showing losses. We should have been paying for it out of, we've been paying for it before out of the general fund. It is a general city expense, just like moving the snow.
But the thought of that was that when you sweep the streets, you don't cause the damage inside the storm sewers, you don't have the sand buildup and everything else, and that's part of the maintenance of the storm sewers, to get the sand out before it goes in there.
Well, no, and also, in addition to the sand, that's to remove the phosphorus so it doesn't contribute to the water quality in the river. And certainly we have requirements now that didn't exist 10 years ago. Other input as part of the public hearing?
Yeah, it's just one comment. Before, when we paid for the general fund, the phosphorus still went into the storm sewer. It's still going in the storm sewer. So that's a poor argument. The gravel was going in there before, it's still going in there.
Other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing? So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Jane, you have that vote? We'll now consider the resolution that would revise the user rates. So again, you have the resolution before you. Questions about that resolution?
I'd move to pass the recommendation for the proposed rate increase.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. Discussion? There's no discussion. I'll call for a vote on the resolution revising the surface water utility management utility rates. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Once again, Jane, you have that vote. Agenda item number 5, consider the award of bids for the refuse hauling services. Tom, do you have this one? While you're coming up, we do have the information, and the action that we need is the resolution to contract with the council member who was the lowest responsible bid for the hauling services. Anything to add to that, Tom?
No. We did get the 2 bids for these pickup at the various city locations, and as you can see from the bid tabulation, that the bid for Southwest Sanitation was about $200 less than the bid submitted by Waste Management. So as you indicated, we do need to adopt the resolution.
Are there any questions about the resolution?
I got a question about the bids. Can you talk
Okay.
about that?
Yes.
Okay. My question about the bids, Tom, is when this was put out for bid, it was put out as a lump sum. You bid on all these, and it's kind of a, even though they're broken out by pieces, you know, you can't take some pieces out of one, some pieces out of the other. You have to take either lump sum or full sum.
It's always been the practice that we award the bid as one lump sum bid
Lump
rather
sum
than
bid.
piecemealing it to different vendors.
I just wondered, because when you look through it, when you piecemeal it, you look through it, there's actually more savings than that, because someone higher and lower, but it's a one-piece deal. Answers the question.
Okay. Question. Any other questions about either the bid or the resolution? If not, then the action would be to act on the resolution, the contract with the council member for the refuse hauling services in that Southwest Sanitation Service is the low bid. I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval of the contract with Southwest Sanitation.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And abstain. Jane, you'll have
Tom,
the
for the
abstention.
record, Tom, have you received a signed affidavit from Mr. Ritter prior to the hearing tonight?
Yes, I have it.
Okay. Thank you.
That motion passes, and Jane, you have the vote. Agenda item number 6, consider the award of the bid for a new fire engine for the Marshall Fire Department. Ben, you want to start with this?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the council, we do have the public safety director here tonight, as well as the fire chief, that could probably speak to the details of this, since they handle the processing of the bids directly. But I do have a memo that's included for a recommended action, kind of summarizing what the fire chief put together. And there's a recommendation to award bid to the General Safety Equipment LLC in the amount of $411,974 for the pumper truck for the fire department, authorizing advertisements for bids on the existing pumper. I think we can explain that in greater detail by one of the other gentlemen. Award of the bid to Hyman Incorporated in the amount of $26,733.05 for the loose goods package. And the bid to Alex Air Apparatus Incorporated in the amount of $21,686 for the purchase of the custom lighting. It did indicate, as I indicated in my memo, Mr. Clay summarized the savings of $26,606.95 less the amount of the bond. I'm not sure what the issuance costs are, and I didn't go back and dig into that. But we should be under the issuance cost that we're expecting with that. So with that, maybe turn it over for any details that Robert and Marvin have to offer.
Okay. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple things. We had them bid out the truck with trading in that 1984 engine, and you can see that they were only allowing us about $5,000 with General. I have proposed that we try sell that truck, advertise for bid and sell that truck ourselves to see if we can generate more than the $5,000. I did talk to General. They have no problem with us. If we've got more for that truck, we'd be adding on to the bottom dollar that we pay them. So there's not an issue with us trying to sell it outright. The new truck, we probably won't be seeing it for about a year. The first payment will be in July, about $166,000, and that's to prepay the chassis. And that was figured in when we bid that truck on a savings if we paid that. The equipment through Hyman, that's the loose goods, that's the fire hoses, the nozzles. We bought some new fans. That equipment that's on that truck right now is probably, I would say, 30-plus years old because it's been transferred to one truck to the other. So we're updating some of that. The Jaws of Life, we do have one set right now in our rescue van. We want to put another set in with the new vehicles being built. They're being built with boron steel, and our Jaws right now will not cut through that. So we thought it would be an opportune time to upgrade that piece of equipment on this truck too when we're doing it. One other thing about this truck, with the future growth of the city of Marshall, the cul-de-sacs, these tighter turning areas that we need to get in, this truck will help us accommodate to get into those areas. It's a lot shorter than the last truck we purchased 6 years ago, so that'll help us for that. If there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Questions?
Yes. Mark, the one we're trading in is the 3D, right?
Right.
How many general ones do we have on the?
Well, the Snorkel was a General, the 1969. The last one we bought is a General. So this will be the second, will be the third one.
And what kind of a chassis? The Ford again?
No, it's got a custom chassis. It'll look just like the 360. And the reason we're going to the custom chassis is also, 25 years down the road, you probably are not going to have to change that cab, where you could take the back end off and put a new box on the back if you're having problems with that. So we were looking into the future as an investment to go to that type of a chassis.
Other questions? Well, just a comment recognizing that the department and the truck committee has gone through a very long process, and the financing of this was also dealt with at an earlier meeting too. so thank you for all the work that you've done in this. This is you have a rotation plan that roughly once every 5 years, there's a replacement of.
Yeah, and we're trying to, this truck is actually 25 years old, it'll be 25, so the next 5 years, we'll have another truck that will have to go. And that truck will actually be older than 25 years old. But, yeah, we are trying to be on that 25-year rotation and a 5-year pay on the truck.
Other questions? Okay, you have the recommendation.
I would move we award the fire truck to general safety equipment in the amount of $411,974 with the understanding that we will be trying to sell the old truck that we award to Hyman Inc. the equipment of $26,733.05 and the Jaws of Life to Ellick Air Apparatus Inc. as recommended by the fire department.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Charlie. Discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your continued support. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Rob, do you have anything else on this?
No, just
Okay.
one thing to interject, that the equipment like the Jaws are exempt from the sales tax when we buy it, so that's one of the purposes besides equipping the truck properly. It also exempts it from sales tax when it's bought in conjunction with the vehicle.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 7 is the consent agenda. We have a number of things on the consent agenda. Rather than me reading through all this before we ask if there's any items to be removed, I'll ask that first. Is there any items that any member of the council wants removed from the consent agenda? Or I could also add, wants added to the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda?
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry to approve all the items on the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the Safe and Sober grant, the approval of the body vest grant for the police department, the authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property, the renewal of the mutual aid agreement with the State of Minnesota in-car computer, annual renewal of the licenses for liquor, beer, tobacco, tolling, storage, resolution designated 2007 budgeted expenditures as future expenditures, resolution amending the budget amounts for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2008, the audit engagement letter with our auditors for 2009, the agreements relating to the paying agency, register and transfer agency with U.S. Bank for general obligation, equipment certificates of indebtedness, the new postage meter rental and service agreement with Claritas, and then the bills and the project payments, and also the building permits are there for information purposes. There's one building permit that was previously approved by city staff. Discussion on that motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
I would just like to clarify, Chris, were you here for one of those items? Oh, okay.
Call for a vote then on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, agenda item number 8 is consideration of the approval of the storage lease agreement. Rob, do you have this? And we also have your recommendation in the memo form to have us enter into the storage agreement. With
Police
storage.
department has an ongoing need for cold storage. Found it cheaper to lease it than to build it, at least on the short term. We had a 3-year lease. Want to increase the size. The one thing in the memo that I've got, the square footage isn't correct. We had envisioned getting a doubles, the bigger facility, and decided part of what we're going to try and do is if we can't dispose of them, once the notification's done, we're just going to scrap them out. So we're going to try and deal with just more, I guess I'd say more marketable cars. And so the square, I must have that on the brain when I did the memo, that was the original amount. It's for the 4,080 feet was what we were contemplating. But anyhow, the dollar amount for 5,400 is correct, but it would be for going from the current 1,800 square feet to 3,600 square feet, which is basically a doubling of our current facility size from Mr. Jacobs. The other thing, we're asking for a one-year lease instead of 3, with the intent that it come up when we had publicized that some lease or lease-to-buy options. Council had talked about working with EDA on some of that, and just in the time frame in which we had to put things together, the lease expired, as well as the need for more space came together. So it's for a one-year lease instead of 3, and then for increasing the size, but to the 3,600 square feet. Did advertise and contact known landlords, and a summary of the chart is on the back to show you what we received. Those were on 3-year proposals, and like I said, we're actually asking for 1. So I think it's sort of a current need. We're minimally able to keep squad cars in the into LEC garage. We only have a few garage stalls, and those are typically full of vehicles. We've got some now, even though with the snow, just out in the parking lot at LEC, and we just need a place to put vehicles before we can turn them over.
Rob, some of these vehicles have to be kept under your secure watch until it might come up in trial or something. Do you ever get reimbursement on that then? And you want to speak to that?
Yes, we sell them through online sales, through most of them, or if they're scrapped out, we get paid for what the scrap cost is, although it has dropped dramatically from what it was in the summer. But yeah, those costs, I mean, they all, as this expense goes out of the general fund, that comes in, and it's they're not paired specifically, but we get the revenue that the city gets the revenue that comes in for either the sales or the disposal.
I guess I was also referring to the basically the court cost, the storage time, and there's a fine ultimately. Do you ever get a chunk of that?
We do. It's usually not a one-on-one, but yeah, we get some. It costs if yes, we get some back.
Okay, questions for Rob? Rob.
Just for clarification, is it 3,600 square feet or 4,080 square feet?
That was it was 3,600, not the 4,080 square foot. We were going for the larger size originally, but the two things, there was a backlog with the auction went off line for basically about 2 months, and we were just inundated with them, and it just sort of seemed like a crisis because we were just had more cars than we could deal with. But it just it's back online, and we're going to scrap more cars out, and we think between those two actions that the 3,000 would be adequate. So that's what we're asking for. I just didn't catch that in the memo.
The 3,600.
Correct.
Do you want to briefly disclose some of the moisture problems we've had?
Sure, we have had moisture. It's typically in long-term for it. It isn't a concrete foundation, and that's one of the things. I guess I'm not a storage specialist, but I found that with it having a gravel floor, there's a reason it's less expensive, and you get less protection, I guess, from it. With it, there's been a moisture problem. Mr. Jacobs has agreed to put in a vented exhaust fan of the facility, which will help. And if we get anything that isn't geared for, I guess what I call sort of the normal turnover, we'd probably want to find an alternate site to store it in. But that is part of why we're looking for a lease to buy with a concrete foundation, so that would reduce that as an issue.
Rob, what percentage of the cars that come through go out as surplus on the auction?
I don't have an exact figure. I would guess maybe 20%, 25%, something
And
like
the
that.
rest of them are redeemed by
By their owners, yes.
their own?
It's usually the junk. I mean, it's, a few of them are forfeited or evidentiary vehicles, but the vast majority are so worthless that, it's easier for the owners just basically to abandon it on the street and leave it for us to deal with. So the decent cars get picked up by the owners.
Within, as early as possible, I would assume.
Right, because we bill them for the costs, and so they typically within a week or two. And many of those actually go directly to the towing service. We'll take them and put them in their facility. So for those that are just the routine ones for snow pickup and that, we don't even deal with that except for some of the billings with the towing service. They're the ones that actually store it.
Well, if only 25% of them are what normally of the 75% type thing, where do you make the distinction between what goes to the towing company and they store them outside where there's moisture, and the ones that you put, obviously if there's...
The two main ones that we deal with are ones that are either evidentiary or forfeiture. Those are our two biggest ones where we try and take it in. Sometimes it's a capacity or availability, but the bulk of the ones we get, there's a potential for forfeiture or abandoned ones that we can sell versus one that's just going to be picked up. So it's fairly straightforward. If it's just what we call a snowbird, one that isn't picked up, that's just routinely picked up by the towing service, taken to their facility, and it's going to be picked up. It's the ones where it's evidentiary, forfeiture, or just abandoned type of vehicle, ones that are going to be ours, so that there's not, because they charge, if we have an abandoned vehicle that they store, they charge us for the storage. And so to avoid those costs, if it's one that isn't going to be picked up, we try and put it in.
So why would we be real concerned about moisture on an abandoned car that we're gonna haul to Beckford or put on statewide auction? Personally, I guess I could care less about those.
But there might be an issue with, because we did, some of them are evidentiary, and if it were returned to the owner, for instance, then there might be an obligation to deal with it. But yeah, the vast majority, I mean, a moderate number go to the crusher, so you don't care. And again, our goal is to keep them, again, somewhat driven by court schedules and that, to turn them over as quickly as we can, and there's not normally going to be that issue then for those. But yeah, we've got some now that are stored outside, so.
Have you ever had a claim on the mold issue?
No.
Did you send out an RFP for a 3-year contract?
Yes.
I guess my feeling, because we set out an RFP for a 3-year contract, this price is locked in for 3 years?
No, this is we contacted Mr. Jacobs and explained that we would like to propose it for 1 year instead of 3, and he was agreeable to that.
But it's, jumping in, and Dan, I think where you're going is that on the chart, it does say the contract would be also for 3 years. So if
the chart, that's what was the RFP. But what we're proposing to you is that price, but for a 1-year contract. And we contacted him and clarified that we were, because of the potential for trying to find something else, asking for a 1-year.
I guess where I'm going with this is in light of the budget situation today and going forward. George, how have you done it in the past on escalations, or do you agree to do a deal for 3 years for that locked-in price?
Was that good, Dan?
I'm looking at $5,400 a year. What did you have in mind for a 3-year contract?
3-year contract? I'll go 6,200.
Pardon?
I'll $200 less. What are we setting at now?
Well, okay, now the clarification.
Maybe I could clarify. We had a 3-year contract in the past, and that was for an agreed-on price, and it was the same price for each of the 3 years. So it did lock it in, and that obviously is one risk that, you know, if we go with a 1-year contract, that depending on what's available, and we're not able to put something together, we could be here a year from now, and it could be the price is higher, if that's where you're going.
The clarification, again, is that if the council chose to award a 3-year agreement, it would be at $5,400 for each of the 3 years.
Yes.
Is that what George, I see, I didn't hear. Is that right, George?
I have mine.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
That this was bid as a 3-year contract, recognizing that the department would recommend going into a 1-year contract. However, since it was bid as a 3-year contract, your bid was $5,400 per year for each of the 3 years.
Is that right, George?
I think that's right. She says right, it's right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we need to know if it's right or not.
Yeah, that's what
That's what you paid before.
No, we paid less because we had a smaller unit, we had the single unit,
Right.
1,800 square foot.
You had 1,800 square feet.
But we had a 3-year contract, so the price was the same for each of the 3 years.
Right.
Would you agree to do that?
I'd do that again for 3 years.
At what, $5,400, George?
Yes.
At the quarter price?
That's what you bid.
I have to go up on it because of rent, because of taxes. Otherwise I wouldn't do it.
So, but that aside, you'll lock it in for 3 years at $5,400 a year.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we do a 3-year contract.
I'll second that.
That sounds like a good deal.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie. Discussion?
I think the only other issue that we talked about that I want to at least make you aware of is with some of the mold problems that we've had on at least one of the vehicles. There was ventilation improvements that were going to be done, and I think by having a 1 year potentially gave us, that if it didn't work out or if there was more problems, we'd be able to back out of that. But I think that was the only other internal discussion that we didn't have about a 1 year versus a 3 year, that if it didn't improve it, we could I wanted to at least disclose that for information.
Right.
I should say too, we do have at least one of the other bidders here that you might want to give an opportunity to speak before the decision maybe is done.
You care to speak, Bill?
No, thanks.
Any other discussion then on the motion? If not, call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ruth. Agenda item number 9, consideration of the resolution for the internal loan to the EDA. Handling this will be Mark Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you stated, in front of you is a consideration for a resolution to do an internal loan from TIF funds to the Economic Development Authority to pay off a note due to the Schwan Food Company. The note is due on December 31st, 2008. Originally, the note was given to a Parkway 2 addition for housing infrastructure. The original note was for $750,000. Upon each sale of each home and each sale of each lot, an amount of $9,146.35 was repaid towards that loan. Since the lots haven't sold as fast as we had hoped, there's a remaining sum of that loan, and that total is $603,658.40, which is due in full on December 31st. In working with Tom Mullenbrook, we found that we can use TIF funds to pay off this loan. So essentially what's going to happen is TIF would pay off the loan, and then the EDA would pay back the TIF funds upon each sale of the lots. In working with TIF Council, we found that we can set a rate of 0%. So essentially that would mirror the rate that was given by Schwan. So the same rate would be given per lot of $9,146.35. One change that we have made, we made the term of the loan at 10 years or the sale of all lots, whichever comes first. Essentially, the format by which the EDA does its business would not change, except for the fact that the payment would go to the TIF funds rather than the Schwan Food Company. I guess at this time I'd open up for any questions.
Okay.
How many lots you got left there?
72.
66.
I was going to say, I think it's...
You received payment for 16 lots.
Yeah. So they would 66, yes.
20%.
They're not all affordable.
Right.
Cheap.
Okay, other questions? If not, there is the resolution before you that would authorize the internal loan.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Mike. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 10, consider the waiver of the 10-day review and rejection authority related to the Economic Development Authority approval of the Community Reinvestment Fund loan to Midwest Aviation. Once again, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And in the audience also, we do have Johnson and Gary St. Aubin. He is owner of Southwest Aviation, and Gary St. Aubin is his accountant who's been helping us with this process. I'll give you a little bit of history and then go right into the topic. Essentially, what has happened is Midwest Aviation has made the choice to look for a potential investor. That potential investor was Petters Aviation. Since that investment, Petters Aviation made a stock purchase from Southwest, and then that deal has not followed through to his expectation. As you've heard, there's been some issues with Petters, and since then, the parent company of Southwest Aviation was Petters Aviation, has went into bankruptcy, and through hearing that, the EDA stated that we want to go to Pete Johnson and see if there's anything we can do to assist. John DeCramer, Vice Chair of the EDA, went to Pete and found that there was some need for the EDA to come forward with some assistance. Essentially, there was some maintenance that was needed to an aircraft that had been sitting in a hangar. The amount of that assistance was approximately $470,000. Well, with further investigation, we found that there were some other needs that were in front of us with Southwest Aviation. I am not going to go into those in great detail. If you have some questions on that, Gary and or Pete may be able to help you. You do have some of that documentation in front of you as far as the numbers. But essentially, where we sit today is the project went forward to the Marshall Industries Foundation, and we decided to use outside counsel and Peterson to go through the financial analysis. All those figures and were given to her by the way of Gary St. Aubin and Pete Johnson. She brought forward her recommendation. She met with the executive committee of the MIF and stated that it appears prudent to go forward with the loan at that time. And the recommendation from the Marshall Industries Foundation was brought forward to the EDA to approve the loan. At the last EDA meeting, we did go over the details of the loan, and a couple of requirements were brought forward. First of all, to have a business subsidy application completed, which was given to you in your packet. Also that Pete would fill out a document stating that the fixed-base operation would stay in Marshall, and then he would continue to keep his 24 employees and hope to expand those employees in the community. That letter was written and given to Tom Mullenbrook as part of the loan package. Along with that, the terms of the loan, as you'll see on the back of the memo, essentially it's a 66-month term. The first 6 months would be at 0% interest with no payments. Concurrently, there would be a 5-month amortization of the loan for $470,000 at a 4%. A couple other caveats to this loan. These engines that are in need of repair have been put into a foreclosure process by the vendor, and so we found that this was very urgent. Essentially, at 10 a.m. on December 17th, these engines will be put up for sale. So the timing is very limited. So what we're doing today is putting a motion in front of the council to waive the 21-day period to review or reject the loan because of the timeliness of the need to get the money in front of the vendor's hands to get the engines back on the airplane.
Just one.
Yes.
Item of clarification.
Yes.
You verbally said 5-month term instead of 5-year.
Yes, apologize, yes, 5-year term. So, I guess if that has any questions at this time, like I said, Pete Johnson and his accountant Gary St. Alpin are in the audience. If you have any other questions that pertain to the $470,000 loan from the CRIP fund to U.S. Aviation.
And again, as you stated, this was recommended, or this was approved by the Economic Development Authority. The role of the council is that the council has a 21-day period that they can review and overturn the action of the EDA and what your request this evening is in the interest of the time and the business is dealing with, that the council would waive that right.
Correct.
Okay. Questions, Charlie?
I got a question on the,
Yes.
on the business subsidy form application. On the back side there, it said there's 24 full-time jobs. An average full-time wage is $70,000 an hour.
Yes.
A year.
A year.
Why, it says an hourly wage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a yearly wage?
Yes.
Well, I'd hope so.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, other questions? Gary or Pete, do you want to make any comments at this time, or just respond if there's any questions? Any other?
I appreciate all the support, Mayor and Council.
I think we're glad to have you back, Pete.
Thanks, Dan.
Is there a motion then from
Make a
the
motion to waive the 21 days.
Second.
motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11, consider the change order, the final change order, acknowledgement of the final payment application for the North 3rd Street reconstruction and bridge replacement project.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see in the memorandum the reasons for the specific additions to the project were general final quantity changes, and then two specific items that were not in the project. One was the removal of a tree. The other is a tile line that was installed for drainage in the boulevard in front of 501 East College Drive. For those two changes to the contract, and the other one's just subject to normal differences in measurement, we would recommend the change order and acknowledgement of final payout.
Okay, is there any questions about the change order? Is there a motion that to allow the change order and acknowledge the final payment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike. Discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 12, consideration of the pond and storm sewer easement and temporary construction easement on Windstar Street from Scott to Trunk Highway 59.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There's two separate easements here that we're talking about for the construction of Windstar Street. You can see this is the area, this is Trunk Highway 23, this is Windstar Street extension. This is the area we're talking about is a piping easement to a pond, to a piping easement that then discharges into a current storm sewer system and then ultimately to our storm sewer system. This one you're looking at involves this permanent easement. The temporary construction easement goes across all of Mr. Carr's property north of this line, and that's in order for scrapers and other construction equipment to get in and out of the facility. That terminates after the first year of construction. This is what we would show in the legal description section, Windstar Street, with this legal description for a permanent storm sewer easement for a pipe that would come from this runoff into this pond. This is a permanent pond easement area. And there's really specific as to what we're responsible for in the long term. In the construction, we're responsible for the construction of the entire system. In the maintenance, we're responsible for the maintenance of the piping in, because it comes from the public system, and the piping out, and the maintenance of the actual pond itself is a private property owner, as it still is a part of the entire piece of development of property. So this is an easement, not a pond owned by the city of Marshall, but we have the rights to utilize that pond for the discharge of runoff from the entire watershed area. This was one thing you saw in the Bolton and Mink discussion when we were talking about Tiger Lake. This ultimately ends up in Tiger Lake. So it's a detention facility, so that it slows it up before it gets to that, which minimizes the size of Tiger Lake. And then this is a look of the temporary construction easement, so we have the right to, when we excavate, to put earth here and run it over.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'd certainly respond.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Any questions about this easement?
Glenn, just for information, Mike, are most ponds within the city limits private? Like I'm referring to those, for example, in South Fort. Are those private or are those owned by the city?
They're both. And there's a complete combination of whether they're public and private. I'll give you an example. South 4th Street, the ones on the east side are private. The one on the west side was private until the city takes it over after the completion of Carr Subdivision 1. The reason for that is because that pond now is for everything west of Carr's addition into what now is owned by Gary Dietz again, as well as everything north of his property, the Elaine Street areas and those areas that contribute. So that's a transitional one owned by one that would be owned by the city. The McFarland Pond, another one that's a private pond that the city utilizes for all of the property down south of Kmart, for instance, and flows through that system. But we maintain all the piping, but we've never maintained the pond structure. Now it's the Runnings Pond. It used to be the Walmart Pond, privately owned, in transition to become publicly owned because of discharges away from their own facility. The Super Walmart Pond, privately owned. And the reason for those is when all of the runoff for the pond comes from the private development, we generally require that to be privately owned, operated, and maintained. As soon as it becomes a facility that's used by others, then there's an agreement for operation and maintenance, ownership and or operation and maintenance, because it's not just their runoff anymore. And can be significant dredging efforts in the future. So the answer is, I'll tell you, probably 50-50. More owned by city than private now.
I'd like to see them all private, then we have no maintenance.
We do too. But when it comes from outside the subdivision, that would be the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion for the pond and the stormwater easement.
So moved.
Second.
And can I ask you also to include the temporary construction easement in your motion?
Yes, including the easement.
Okay, motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. Agenda item number 13, consideration of the purchase of real property for future use of a city park located adjacent to Windstar Street. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is another facility that we've been working on for some time. This is the proposed location of the park. This again is Trunk Highway 23. This is Trunk Highway 29. This is the Stonebridge Estates subdivision that's currently under construction. This is the area of Greg Taylor's developments, Club 59, University Park, Trailer Court, Fort and Carr State area. The Parks Department, and Harry Wyloggy is here too for community services. They've been working very hard to try to identify property south of 23 for the installation of a park. And originally, the direction from the, and I'll say it's the Community Services Board,
DSU, original plan.
okay, was a recommendation of about a 30-acre park south of that. And if you want to compare that to sizing, and I know we provide some information in the council packet, but for the public, that information was provided a couple of, at least a year or so ago, in that the comparisons of size, Independence Park is about 54 acres, you know, a fairly significant park development area. And I don't see maybe...
Legion is 24, Justice is a little over 7.
Okay.
And this is at 12.4. But we'd also add that Independence, as a 51-acre park, also serves a dual function in stormwater management. So yes, the water takes up a portion of that. And in the discussions over time, and with the discussions with the Amateur Sports Commission, and the idea of the 50-acre park was that was going to contain some of that type of facilities, that this developed now into what we call the neighborhood park. And the discussions were held with both Matt Woods and Cars on, you know, potential site, and this then is the recommended location that is before you tonight. It's about 12.487 acres of land, specifically in that location, with the layout as you see it. I will bring your attention to Exhibit B. The dollar amount that we have tentatively agreed upon with Mr. Carr was $110,000, and that is for that acreage. He disagreed with the land value. He agrees with the cash payment. And the land value that we gave to it was something that we came to from Cal Barnett's numbers previously for general agricultural land values inflated to the current amount according to the sales that are going on. And you know what those are. Mr. Carr said that he disagrees with that number, would like the property appraised by a licensed appraiser at mutually agreed upon appraiser, and that's the procedure that we would normally take to do the acquisition, and the difference would be the gift value that would be included in a form provided by the IRS for gifting. And I don't know, it just came up late this afternoon, I don't know what of any impacts that would possibly have on the city if the gift value is equal to the difference in the appraised value and the cash value. I can't see that it would be a difference in cost to the city one way or the other. And I believe that that was certainly a reasonable request. He would probably forego the cost of an appraiser of about $1,500 to $2,000 an appraisal. I think that's what we've seen in the past that we would pay for if we would agree to an amount up to about $250,000 of cash of gift contribution. That's based upon a tentative appraisal that he had done with an appraiser out of Mankato in the amount of $360,000. And I said, I have no idea what that amount would be, but I don't see anything on the downside of giving them what the appraised value would be as far as the gift for tax purposes. Maybe some of you have more expertise in what that impact might be, Dennis.
I'm not seeing any downside risk either, just initial concept of it seems.
Mike, you want to comment at all on that?
If it's $110,000 to us, cash payment.
Yeah, I don't see a downside for the city.
And then I would recommend that we negotiate what that is up to what a reasonable value would be rather than spending $2,000 on an appraisal. But that's something I wanted to talk to you about too. We would have a better, I think, standing with the appraisal to justify what that number would be for the gift form.
Well, it does seem to me the IRS is, the only downside would be for the seller is that if it's, property is given away to a charity or whatever, if it's over X number of dollars, you have to have an appraisal to establish that value. But that would be from the donor's side, not our side, so that's...
It would be a cost of the property, and he indicated that, if we wanted an appraisal done to define that difference, that we should do that. So, or change the number of the acquisition, I suppose, to 110,000 plus the 1,500.
I would have to believe when he talks to his tax person that he's going to want an appraisal, or be required to have an appraisal.
And I would certainly recommend that because we didn't have any hard numbers to show what that donation was.
Did you say, excuse me, did you say he had an appraisal done from someone in Mankato?
He contacted an appraiser to have him come and see it, to see what it might be worth, without all of the, here's the drive-by, here's where it is, what do you think it's worth?
So you can't use that.
Okay, any other questions for Glenn?
Or Harry, too, if you have any questions on the park development. Maybe a comment on that. We've talked about the park development. We've always thought that the private-public partnering that we've done in the past on those is critical for development. It gives a buy-in to the area, and that's where they're going with their park development is, whether it's Mathowitz's or Cars or Taylor's or Shearholt's, or give them all the opportunity to participate in the development of the park.
But recognizing that good planning means identify your location before that development happens.
Absolutely correct.
The comment I would make on that is, I think council is aware that we've worked hard over the last few years to identify a location. This property is a high location. It's a wonderful location for a park, for sliding hills for that age group that's out in that area for a neighborhood park. It's not low or a lot of water course. It's a prime piece of real estate, we think, for a park development.
He's aware too that there's an opportunity right now to acquire it. If he was the owner, maybe a different situation 3, 4, or 5 years down the road. So it's an opportunity for us to take advantage of the situation.
And I know in the previous discussion with the council, you've indicated that with the road under contract, there's a need to take care of some excess soil, and this would provide the place to do that.
We have in our contract, we have the authority to direct the final placement of any fill we want within a half mile of the project. So our staff is already putting plans together for the quantity of dirt that we want to retain for like the sledding hill, for instance, and have it placed at that site. So that's an advantage right now with the contract being there.
Where's the money coming?
We have a note that indicates it would be from the general fund with potential reimbursements from future projects. And we didn't want to identify what those future projects are in the memorandum because there is an opportunity for the local 429 account possibly from other sources like the park fees for development. But the intent is for it to come from the general fund to start with, and then the potential for reimbursement from the project.
Charlie, you had a question?
Oh, I guess I was going to say that I think it's extremely reasonable. The price that's on this land right now is extremely reasonable. I think Mr. Carr's being extremely reasonable to us too. So if we had to do an assessment to guarantee that he got the highest amount of value back for his gift, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. It's something I'd recommend we move forward and get accomplished.
Do remember, we will have some additional costs, special assessments along Windstar that would normally be assessed to lots. Still a good deal, but I mean, there is some extra cost.
Any other discussion, questions?
One of the other discussion items was scheduling of the development. Is there any legal provisions in this agreement that would commit us to development within a certain period of time? I didn't see anything in the
The other terms on page 16-2, number 6, are the only other terms that we have in the contract other than the purchase price. Subject to all existing easements, buyer honors those responsible for the platting of the property prior to the transfer. As you know, that's a meets and bounds description, and we would have to plat the property prior to the sales to us. I did indicate, he had indicated that he would not be platting the rest until he was reasonably up to sale on his other lots, but he's also considering the potential of if we plat this piece and the street that goes through it, that he would probably tie in this piece that would be unplatted in the middle of two platted pieces and this piece, and the potential of going down here on this side. And it really doesn't cost, it's negligible additional cost to do that at the same time. So we'll tell him when we're going to have the surveyor do this, and that would be the time for him, if he wanted to do any, to bring in whatever pieces here, any or none, that he wanted. Anything from here south he wouldn't. But that's a potential that would come forward in this plan. Also then, no future park development fees on the remainder of the parcel. That ends up being about 50 to 70,000. We think that that's certainly the case if he's paid the park development fees on all of this, and given a donation in his eyes of $260,000, that those parkland development fees would be reasonable to ask for that if he puts it all on his land. So we believe that that's appropriate. Those are the only written considerations we have. And Ben, that's correct. We have had discussions that, to be honest, he said, we'd sure like to see that done in my lifetime. That's kind of important for guys who are giving money. And it would be our intent to do basic improvements with this private partner, public partner procedure over the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Make a motion for approval of the purchase agreement with Robert L. and Phil Scar for 12.47 acres in the amount of $110,000.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Dan. Discussion on that motion? There's no discussion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 15. Consider change order for West...
14.
Or, excuse me. Agenda item number 14. Consider the resolution that would approve the final plat of the ADM Industrial Park. Glenn.
Thank you. Remember back to June, this came up in front of you before as far as the preliminary plat, and there were several things that needed to take place for us to do the final plat of the industrial park. And as far as I know, all of those other contingencies have been met. Dennis jump in here if there is something that isn't on there, like the title opinion.
That's not been done.
We'll make it subject to approval of the title opinion from the city attorney's office and payment of all fees. So instead of just one, add number 2, the title issue that we asked at that time. Any other items that you can think of?
The draft form of the security that they have proposed has been reviewed and approved, but the final security document that's not yet been provided.
And generally, we approve the draft, development contract as well, but the construction and security for the construction is really separate from your final plat approval. Yes, the development contract needs to be approved and filed with the final plat. And then in the case of ADM, went forward without the development agreement and constructed the roadway. And so now the only thing in our development contract is the warranty provisions for the roadway that's been developed in accordance with our specifications. But they physically constructed the road prior to any development agreement being filed. They needed it to get their stuff done, to get these things arranged for, but there are no issues, I won't even say significant, construction of the roadway. Now after it's approved, we will only require a security bond or security. Is it a bond in this case?
Yes, it's
okay.
a private construction security bond.
For the warranty provisions of the contract. Getting back to really what it is the extension of North 7th Street that used to cross the railroad track, parallel the roadway and come in right here, real close to the railroad tracks. Now that roadway diverts, comes up to the township road. There's a set of gates there here. Now on the railroad tracks, there's a distance from that crossing to the new entrance that allows stacking, allows vehicles on to the gravel roadway prior to it. Lots of good improvements that were made for this crossings on that development. So this is what this involves, is platting of this piece of property west of the east line of North 7th Street. This is still outside the city limits. This is what's platted as Block 1 of ADM Industrial Park. It kind of clears up a few tax issues too, of parcels and property that can be combined into just one large lot. So we certainly recommend approval.
When the crossing, is that considered a township responsibility or a city?
No, township responsibility.
Because the city limits would end right there.
This location, and that crossing was put in by funds other than ours, and is their responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, in the development contract itself, on page 4, is that a typo or is everything done? Number 8, it says October 15th of 2008. The developer shall install all required developer construction improvements by October 15th.
That is correct, and they are.
Okay, well, it's just...
It's after the fact, and the development contract for now is the warranty provisions of the contract. And this is the agreement that was proposed in the preliminary plat time.
I just want to be sure
That is
that
correct.
okay.
Other questions?
I'll make a motion for resolution.
Second. Motion by Dan, second by discussion. If not, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 15, consider change order for the West Redwood Street North Street Improvement Project.
Changes to the, this is the West Redwood Street, adjacent to the demolished junior high school. Both change orders were reimbursed 100% by MMU. We recommend approval.
Questions?
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. Discussion? Now, motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're going to call for a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene the meeting. We are on agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16 is to consider the resolution adopting the 2009 budget. Agenda item number 17 is the resolution approving the 2008 tax levy collectible in 2009. So both actions are related. Ben, I'll turn to you, and then we'll have any discussion. If there is any public comment, we can also take that.
I think you're honored members of the City Council. The resolution is included in your packets for review. I'll cover both the budget and the tax levy summaries in one report, and you'll need separate votes on those. The total final budget revenues are summarized at $10,942,553 and expenditures of $11,429,553,000. It includes the purchase of a fire truck where we are receiving the monies in 08 and expending in 09. With that, the proposal following the final budget work session was a total tax levy of $3,266,566 is what will be supported through that, as summarized in the memo. The detailed or summary budget pages are included for your information in the packets. Basically, as highlights are considered, the general fund expenditures are up, as well as the revenues of about 4.5% when you exclude the fire truck. The council did incorporate a no tax increase from the general fund itself, which puts the 08 levy was at $4,334,275. The preliminary levy that went out in the tax notices were at $5,106,990, which was roughly a little over a 17% increase. At the Truth in Taxation hearing, we discussed a maximum levy of $4,472,516, which would equate to about a 3.5% increase. Following the final budget reviews and discussion with the City Council, we made further reductions primarily in the capital equipment, as well as some of the wage adjustments, as well as a few other areas, bringing the 2009 proposed levy from that last budget work session at $4,372,584, which is a levy increase of $38,309 from 2008 to 2009, which equates to a percentage-wise at about 0.88% increase in the levy. Taking a look at our overall market values from 08 to 09, we have about a little over $12 million in new construction that I guess equates to real growth in our tax base, if you will. So what that does is, with the proposed levy increase, we'll actually see a tax rate reduction for the city from 08 to 2009 when you factor in both the the final levy, as well as the increase in market values that we have in real growth. So this isn't quite exact, but for the purposes of my estimation of the 09 tax rate, I'm going to use this number. But in 08, the tax rate is approximately 50.87%. And the preliminary tax rate that showed up on the tax statements was at about 57.18%. So you can see it was proposed to go up quite a bit. And then the 2009 tax rate actually reduces, under my estimation, at about 48.18%. What does the percentages mean? It's a little hard to explain or even make sense of, but what it basically means is that if the valuations on your individual property tax statements remain the same from 08 to 09, you'll actually see a reduction in your overall property taxes. And I would, again, there was a lot of discussion about the increased valuation of the business owners, which was 15%. There was real growth in our tax base beyond just valuation changes up and down too. I think that needs to be articulated. But again, those people will likely see some increase. I haven't rerun the numbers to see exactly what the impact would be to them with just a 15% in our final numbers. But it comes down from what our worst case scenario, our lowest figure at the Truth in Taxation hearing will be less than that. So again, I would anticipate that a number of our residents will see a reduction on their city taxes anyway, from 08 to 09. With that, I did not prepare any detailed presentation. One thing to note for the city council in running the final numbers is that one of the discussions was we did fund one police vehicle, but left another one kind of in our reserve account. So that reserve money, we did illustrate that number plus any remain. We did have an excess revenue that we did transfer into the capital reserve. So in your budget sheet, if you look under the page 6 of the proposed budget, consolidated functions expenditures, again, it would be page 6 at the top right-hand corner. If you go down the second to last column where it says dollar increase, that $116,208 includes that kind of reserving money for the fire truck plus the additional amount that we set aside in the general fund through capital reserve. And so that would be available. With that, I did not prepare any real detailed formal presentation since most of those are included in the truth and taxation hearing, even though we made adjustments after the fact. We do have the proposed tax levy resolution as well that's included for your information that details the various funds that goes into. It's included for your information. With that, we would be, pending council approval this evening, which if you wouldn't approve it this evening, we would need to reschedule prior to, I believe it's, I don't even know off the top of my head, I guess, because I was assuming we had consensus. We'd have to reschedule our meeting if you don't approve it tonight so we can meet the state deadline for approval of this. So staff is recommending, and I'm assuming that we're heading in that direction following the last budget work session that we did hold. Assuming that we go forward with the overall approval, we will be working on printing up the detailed final budget sheets and packet for make available to the city council as well as to the general public. With that, again, I recommend approval of the items number 16 and 17, adopting the resolution adopting the 2009 budget, as well as the 2009 resolution adopting the 2008 tax levy for taxes 2008 for payable in 09. I would also recommend that you offer the opportunity of the public to comment prior to adoption.
Thank you, Ben. And just two comments. First off, thank you to you as well as the division heads and the staff that you worked with in a lot of hard work that went into this budget. Second comment I would make also has to do with the revenues in that this does include the revenue as is in current law for a local government aid that would be coming in our 2009, the state's fiscal year 2008-2009. So recognizing that we have a potential issue that we will need to deal with if the state does reduce local government aid by legislative action.
And I will be discussing that under the city administrator's report in greater detail, plus also probably commenting on it under the next agenda item.
Yes. Okay. Questions for Ben or discussion? And I'd open this up if there's audience. Bill?
I'd just like to know some of the items that you guys cut out of the budget after the business people came and spoke with the truth and taxation.
Yes. We could, I can start while you're looking at your list. One of the next actions is not implementing the salary increase for city staff. There's many of the capital items that were proposed all the way from a truck for the street department to a maintenance building addition at the airport. Ben, you found your sheet yet?
I'm not sure I have all of them in here. Tom, do you remember some of those on the list here? I thought my sheet would show the crossouts, but I think I hand wrote it on a different sheet of all the items that got removed. But
how about the Whitney statue?
That one is in there, and what it is there's the city's contribution is $5,000, and it's being matched by private contributions of $25,000. And if the project wouldn't go forward, then it wouldn't be expended. They don't believe that they've started the fundraising on that, but the cities would go towards towards that project. The other thing too with the local government aid cuts is even the capital projects that made the cut, one of the items we're doing is requiring my authorization prior to actually purchasing them too, in case there's further cuts that come about. The wage increase was, we finalized a 1.5% wage increase in the budget, but in the next agenda item that we'll be talking about is we are not implementing that at the first of the year. Basically, we'll have a general wage freeze that's being incorporated, but the budget does include funds for a 1.5% increase, kind of leaving opportunity depending on what happens with the local government aid cuts in the future. It wouldn't commit the council either way to incorporate an increase or not, but that's what was budgeted. New roof on the impound center was out. Office furniture, I believe, we left in. Tandem axle truck we had taken off. The pickup truck was off. Air exchanger at the public safety center was out. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Street department.
Street department, sorry. We did talk about, we did set aside some money though to have a study done to determine what system would be appropriate in there. That was a $75,000 figure. Airport crack repair stayed in, as well as the firefighting suits also stayed in. And more.
Six of them were removed for the fire department. 6 sets of training were removed for the fire department for that purpose.
We didn't leave the pedestrian bridge in, however, that is primarily financed. We're looking at financing that either with our internal funds. We're not getting a lot of interest right now, so we might internally borrow and repay that, or else look at borrowing that with a note for a majority of that. And that would be, what was talked about was the pool, pedestrian crossing at the pool bridge.
But the price was reduced on that.
Yes.
Yes. The super rake from the Parks Department was removed. The ATV from the Parks Department was removed. The Legion Fields Message Center is in there, but the city's portion that we have budgeted is only $5,000, and it's from the liquor fund, so there's no general tax impact from that one. The scanner for the city administration, because we are under budget, that was the one we had previously talked about purchasing it in 08 and then reimbursing back the account in 09. We actually are under budget in our data processing funds. The council agreed to expense that in 2008, not making the adjustment back in 09. And then the ambulance garage is a borrowing item to be financed back through lease revenues to the ambulance. However, we're putting monies in the budget to that project, but there's a lot of discussion that has to go on with the ambulance people and finalizing what the plans and specs will be, so there'll be a number of other approvals that would happen before that occurs. I think, I missed my page. The squad vehicles, we removed one city squad, but we included one back in. So we have one squad that we're purchasing, one that we're not. And the one that we're not, in case it breaks down, we do have monies reserved in an emergency if it would break down. The fire department turnout gear stays in. Public safety center, we reduced our digital camera to $500 from what was presented. The assessing shredder, Tom, do you remember, is that one, remember if that one was removed? $3,500 for the shredder?
Yeah, that was out.
That was out. That one was removed. Computer from the pool, we will use a used computer for that one, from our regular replacement, so they won't get a separate new one. The assessing software is still in. Fiber line, if we make the move on the Studio One, we're going to actually, that's reduced down from 11,000 because we're going to make payments over a number of years rather than paying the full cash value, and MMU will work with us on that. Server replacement stays in. The elevator improvements, we have the carpet to the community services, I believe, was taken out, but the we agreed to keep the elevator improvements at $10,000 so that we can, if we didn't put $10,000 basically into this elevator here, we would have to shut it down based on a letter from the state of Minnesota. We are putting in the minimum requirements, which isn't cheap, it's still $10,000, but to having a safety alarm where I think a call, right now, there's just an in-city alarm that kind of runs here, a bell that rings. But if you're here after hours, there's no call that would go to dispatch or anything, so we'd have to put that in order to meet those requirements. So that's getting done. And then we were also doing a handicap accessible door, the amount of $5,000. So we actually added $10,000 back into that one for accessibility purposes. And then we did take out the TriCaster studio system and agreed that that would be the future consideration. We would continue to use our used equipment. I think those hit on probably the big items that were reduced from the council meeting, as well as we did have an additional revenue source that impacted, I think, from the truth and taxation hearing to the final, where from our special projects accounts, like for engineering fees is primarily where it's coming from, where we had an additional $300,000 that we're projecting that are going to be carried in above what we had budgeted for 08, that will be coming in as a revenue in 09. And it's when we bill out, basically, we have an agreement with MMU that rather than hiring a private engineer, we utilize our own internal engineering department to help prepare some of those documents. So with the level of street projects and things that we had going on this year, we're actually having excess revenue projected to come in next year, which helped deal with that issue to close the gap. But with that, the council agreed to set some of that money, additional money over expenditures towards reserve, and then also to bring down the general fund tax levy to zero. Now, there are other special funds like debt service and EDA and library that still do have money increases in the levy that are included, but the general fund, which is the majority of city operational costs, the council agreed to, I think it was like in a little over $60,000 that they agreed to bring down to zero increase in light of discussions over concerns that have been voiced in the economy and those kinds of things. So those were most of the reductions, and then on the revenue side where they came in at from the final, from what was presented at the truth and taxation hearing.
Thank you for sharing that with the public, and I think that's important.
Other discussion? Any other questions first? If not, council ready to act on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie, for the resolution adopting the 2009 budget. Discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. And then the next item then is the resolution that would approve the tax levy that would support that budget. Once again, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 18, consider the compensation adjustment related to the city appraiser and the assessing technician. Ben.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the City Council. This is a little bit of a carryover from the interim city administrator who left for me to deal with. I wanted to get a draft decision made before the end of the year for accounting purposes. It'd be nice to close up this obligation. But as you know, the city went for quite a period of time without refilling of our city appraiser position when that person retired. There was additional work by the staff that was done within that department, primarily for the period of time leading up till the Board of Appeals and Assessments in May. At that time, my understanding was the interim administrator directed them to track their time and the actual additional hours beyond what they would normally do that the former director would have handled that exceeded what their normal hours were. They were compensated for all of their hours, so if they worked overtime, they were compensated for that time. What was being tracked was the additional actual hours. With that, the recommendation that was brought forward by the interim administrator, Mr. Olson, was to compensate for basically a wage differential between the actual cost of their pay and what a commercial appraiser would be expected, what a commercial appraiser would be paid, what their rate would be minus what the actual pay rate to the employees would be. And I took a look at that and did a detailed review. I worked with Mr. Olson to come up with his, as well as went through a procedure with working with Sheila Dubbs, the assistant to the city administrator, who's taking on an expanded role on some of the assistance on personnel matters. Sheila did a good job and actually did a lot of the legwork for me upon my direction. But we actually went out and there was a step schedule done to determine if it was just strictly a commercial appraiser, what a step schedule within our pay system would be. Taking a look at that, I felt that it was a little high to take into consideration, you know, the true steps of that position, because although they're doing commercial work on an interim basis, you might not do it to the level of professionalism maybe that a person at a full-time rate. However, I took a look at what that pay scale was in comparison to the wage schedules for the residential appraiser as well as the assistant that's in that office and what they were getting paid. We're not talking big numbers of hours, but they tracked one of the employees was at 23.95 hours that they had documented. 263.25 total hours, and then 99.75 hours for the assistant. With that, and taking a look at comparing the wages to a real appraiser to what they're getting paid and the additional hours, I'm recommending that we do adopt a wage differential that's 10% above their regular rate of pay for each of the positions. I felt that was reasonable, and with that, the dollar impact is illustrated there for your information. Actually, the hours are tracked there and detailed in my background memo, and the total impact would be $659.40 for the appraiser position and $228.25 for the assessing technician. Again, I think that the additional work that was done during this time is justified for some additional compensation. I think the proposal is reasonable. I did not specifically, although I had Sheila inform the individuals what was being recommended this evening, there were no formal commitments to them on any actual compensation levels. But with that, I would recommend as included, the pay differentials as included in the summarized in the memo.
Okay. Glenn, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No. I gave them some information and recommendation, and the Ben's conservative nature, we reduced it somewhat. So I support the recommendation.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation unless there's some questions.
Motion by Dan, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Discussion. No discussion, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 19, consideration of the adoption of the 2009 wage schedule. Let's get that.
I think you're going to remember as a city council, our wage schedules actually illustrate a year at the top of the wage schedule. So even though we're recommending no change in the general wage schedule, as discussed earlier, that I'll talk about more in preparation of these local government aid cuts with the, again, per our discussion in the last work session, based on our state of the economy as well as pending potential cuts in local government aid, the council directed a no wage change from 2008 to 2009. That schedule is included in your packet for your information, and we basically just updated the years. So with that, the recommendation is to approve the wage schedule as presented. I'll talk about it in greater detail, but the employees were notified of this at a meeting held earlier today in which they were all invited to attend that I presented at.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. Tom, maybe you can answer that question. When they get to like step 6, then that's the end of other than the regular increases, that's all they ever get? Is that right? Is there anybody that's getting paid for their pay level above a step 6?
Actually, I believe that was addressed in the spring study.
It used to be up to step 5, right, Mike? They used to be up to step 5, and then a few that were beyond, we just went to step 6 because the numbers were already there.
The only changes were they used to have what's called start.
Right.
And steps 1 through 5, and they took out the start and changed it, so it's the exact same schedule, except there's 6 steps instead of start in 1 through 5. But I believe, at least, I don't know about this year either, Tom, but there have in the past been people paid outside of that, and I know they have a printout of that if you're interested in those. I've seen the printouts of actual salary versus steps. And you're right, that might have caught up to them.
We would never, going forward, though, put anybody in a step above the pay scale. Or, right?
I think that happened in the past when they were getting paid more, and then we implemented the step program, and they were outside the steps. I know I have a couple of employees that happened to, and they were frozen in wages for some years until it caught up to them. So you're right, there used to be that list, and it may have gone away, but I'm sure that if you're interested in who might be over that, we could get that for you.
And I think the standard practice to change the language from a start step to just step 1 to 6. It's the industry practice, and although it's always assumed that you hire somebody at step 1, depending on qualifications, you could be hired within the range. And so that's why the change is being implemented.
Okay. Other questions?
I'd move to adopt the wage schedule as presented in the attachment.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Dan. Discussion. Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 20, consider the resolution approving specific fees to be charged by the City of Marshall. This was, I believe, addressed this afternoon by the Ways and Means Committee. Ben, are you going to start on this, or?
Yes, we'll jump into that.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the City Council. The Ways and Means Committee that meet today made a recommendation to adopt a fee schedule with a number of amendments to those items that were included in your packet. And I will summarize them. There are basically 4 items, 4 amendments to the red line version that's included in your packet. The first amendment relates to on page, which show up on your page, bottom right-hand corner, 20-6, or kind of at the bottom of the wage schedule, showing up as page 7. In the middle of the page, there is the title of the engineering department. The last one within that says permit to move building. I'm going to change that language to add, after permit, to add the language application is the new word, to move building. So what's being recommended there is that right now, if somebody proposes to have a building moved within the city, there is no application fee. They only pay a fee of $50 if it's approved, and then they pay that. The recommended change would be to add a application fee of $50, regardless of whether it's approved or not. It's $50 each time you apply for a moving building permit. If it were approved by the City Council, there would be no additional fee beyond that application fee. So that would be the proposed change that's being recommended in that section. So again, the addition of the word application after permit. The next one would be on the bottom of the page previous to that, 20-5 in the bottom right-hand corner. And it shows up on page 5 is the resolution schedule. We might just want to verify this with Mr. Olson since he's here, but we felt that it was his intent on those last 2 items that were added for the dump truck and the skid loader in the amount of $75 per hour and $70 per hour. It was was our understanding that we were also intending to add the language of with operator after those items. Are you requiring an operator with those, Glenn?
We are requiring an operator, and it should be the same rate. Do we have one also listed under the street department?
Yeah, these are falling under the airport.
Yes. Do we also have them under the street department? I want to make sure that they're the same.
Okay. Those are the ones that cost.
Well, that was
It's
the
the
street.
page
It
10.
doesn't say with operator, but I think the assumption was those were all with operator.
No, if it doesn't say with operator, there usually is a note of 30, I believe $30 an operator,
Okay,
dollars
down
an
at the
hour.
bottom.
Okay, on the bottom of the street, there is one that says $30 per hour for an operator. The other airport ones, the dump truck and skid loader did not have the language of with operator there. So I guess it's a clarification whether you want that to be with operator.
We want it to be the same. So if in fact, did you find one for the streets?
For that type of equipment.
On page 10, Glenn.
And the dump truck there is 75, skid loader is 70. We would want to add plus $30 for the operator, so put $105 per hour for the dump truck and $100 an hour for the skid loader. We also indicate that those rates are for government agencies only. For non-government entities, multiply the rate by 1.5. We would want to make sure that any rentals, and we do have that also as the heading for the airport rentals. That's important.
Jenny's not here, but would you agree to that addition of the
That's fine,
$30
yes.
on top of it?
We just weren't sure whether, because
So
it
again-
didn't say with operator, we did not flip to the other page.
So on that item again, then it would read $105 per hour with operator for the dump truck and $100 per hour with operator for the skid loader. Okay. On the, kind of jumping around here a little bit.
I would like to jump in one, Glenn, that implies that under the street department, they wouldn't have to have an operator?
We would determine that in advance, but everything that I see there, we would not lease without an operator. See, in the cases of when we're doing it for an emergency response or something like that, there are cases where maybe we would if they had a certified boom truck person in the city of Worthington. There may be a case where we need our men here doing our work and we would allow them to utilize it with a cooperative agreement. So we want to leave that flexibility there. 95% of the time it would be with an operator.
And then two last provisions, and they would show up on the bottom of the fee schedule, page 12. And it's relating to the Economic Development Department on the web portal fees. Again, this is not for private companies, this is only for government nonprofit, as it's in the parentheses. But the far right column heading is titled EDS Startup Fee. That should read EDA Startup Fee. And basically what that is there's like if you were to have a link, I use the example of a link to the city of Minneota for their Bucks Elder Bug Days. If they wanted to have like a little bubble that shows up on the web portal homepage, they'd be allowed to do that with a fee since they're not one of the members of our group. They'd pay a one-time basically setup fee of $25 for the design, and then every time they wanted to run it, it would be based on those monthly fees. So again, the change there would be changing the S to an A on that column so that it's EDA, not EDS. And then the last one would be the date of the approval. It should not be May 5th, it should be December 15th as today's date. Oh, good catch. There's spelling was caught by the city attorney here on the first row under that EDA says web portal rates. It should read web portal rates.
Couple other comments is that the effective date, sometimes for us it'd be better for that to be effective January 1.
Yes.
So rather than December 15th, your date of approval, just because of keeping all of our billings constant through the end of the fiscal year. Also on page 8, the water main tapping and water meters. This is an FYI. We're working with MMU to transfer that responsibilities to MMU. They have taken on the additional responsibilities of your private, what used to be in the past, your private line from the main to the curb stop. And that's what this water main tapping was for tapping out at the main. Now that's the responsibility of MMU. So we're looking at transferring that responsibility as a connection fee, just like we do for sanitary sewer service. There's a connection fee to connect to the curb stop, which then is owned by MMU. So there would be no, it used to be called water main tapping. There would be no such thing in the future. It would be a connection fee to their curb stop. We would do that as an amendment sometime next year after MMU and the city came to agreement on procedure. Until that time, we'd be doing it through our office until that transferred over. But that's a real difference in operations and procedure, and then they would take this. The impact to us would be the loss of the administrative fee, which I think currently is about $1,500 for the year, but it's a lot of work doing that as well. So
okay.
And that was just something that we'll probably have to address in the next quarters.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Mike?
Yes, there are two other areas where we're asking a board or commission to go back and look at. One of them deals with cable. For example, on page 2, it does not say anything at all about whether they could film, for example, be asked to film a wedding in the park or some private type thing, and I think the cable commission needs to make a determination on what is and is not allowable, and if so, would there be a fee connected with it? So that's a recommendation also that be looked at.
We made a decision on that, I believe last spring, where we decided that if it was a public function for a public purpose, outside of, that is a public function that was done for free. If it was something that was being asked to be done, like right now Schwann's is contracted a number of times, and they get a set rate per hour for any work that's done for them. And they charged a certain amount of money, I believe, when Michael Reagan came to speak for the Christian school, because it was a non-profit organization that was doing a fundraiser. So there was some structure put into place that we voted on a per hour rate, and I can't remember what the exact.
Okay, but that's a fee generator for this, and I believe it needs to be included in here under cable.
Well, it's probably going to be included along with the work done if you're going to go to the marketplace building and do sound studio, and there's going to be rent for a sound studio. That's going to come through the same kind of funding, so all that's going to have to be put in a package together.
So the recommendation from the Ways and Means is that be referred to the cable for their input as to rates and get it in writing, because I think we have a liability issue, well, plus other issues if it's not specified here and all of a sudden they're out filming something privately and just arbitrarily start collecting money for it. I think we got a problem.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea to have those, maybe they're just an amendment to this.
Yes,
You come in with.
that would come later.
Yeah.
And the other one would be the chemical assessment team. We have charges for the fire department, and what brought it to my attention is under fire department, we got the hazmat trailer. The chemical assessment team at the Merit Center has what they call a hazmat trailer also, but there's no charges for that. But I believe, Ben, you mentioned it, that in fact they went out and worked on a spill here recently, or Tom did, at Wyndham or whatever, and they got charged. Well, it'd be nice to know what they got charged. I mean, I think we need to have the merit board and Rob come up with some recommendation, and we include those in here. Those would come as a later amendment.
They were items that were submitted to the state for reimbursement.
Okay. But no one seems to know what those numbers are, but I think we should include that here, again, from both a liability point of view and a procedural point of view in our fee structure.
So that can be looked at.
Those are just ones we're researching, but we recommend to still adopt with these amendments at this time.
So I would make a motion that we recommend the 209 fees as recommended by the Ways and Means, but also to do the other, the cable and the CAT team gathering information for a possible amendment.
Motion by Mike, is there a second by Larry? And Jane, you kept track of the changes that were recommended as we had our discussion. Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
I got one more question, I guess, on page 7, maybe you can help me out with this one. It says charges for copies, $5 minimum, no charge under $5. To me, that's kind of contradictory, because you say, I'm going to charge you at least $5 for everything. That's what it says to me. And if you don't got at least $5, I'm not charging you.
We missed that.
Is it,
No, the intent is, I don't know how it was worded, the intent is that somebody comes in, and usually it's for a business-related purpose or something, and it costs us more to bill the person 25 cents than it is to, so we set the limit, I think it was a couple years ago or so, of $5 minimum, and that's only if they have 10 sheets or 20 sheets. So that's the way it's implemented. I don't know how you want it.
And what page is that on?
Page 7. It's under the engineering on page 7. There's 3 charges like that. One for plotting, one for aerial photos, and one for copies.
But I think when I read that, if you go in there, for example, and if you want one small scale copy at $0.25.
$2. 8.5 by 11 would be $2.
Well, yeah, then you're under photo printing.
Yep.
I'm just saying the minimum you got up there, Glenn, halfway up is small
About
scale,
50 cents.
quarter,
Yep.
or 50 cents the next. Yep. If you go in there and you only have one done, it's still going to cost you $5.
And we don't do it that way.
Well, then you're nice.
We do it as if they have a total bill of $5 or more, we give them a bill. We do have some customers that come in regularly and let their number of copies go up, like some of our developers. And then we just keep track of that, and then we bill them at the end of the month or something like that for the 57 copies that they've had done.
Okay, so the language actually, the way that you're implementing it, the language maybe is okay with the way that you understand it, in that it's a $5 minimum, and you are not going to make out a bill for charges that is less than $5.
If you want something different, we sure would.
So we're saying we're not going to let them charge it if it's $5. You have to pay for it cash then?
No, you can charge it. Anything over $5, we'll bill it. Anything under $5,
They pay for it.
They'll walk out the door without paying.
And then when it gets up to $5, you bill them.
But if I came in here once in my life and wanted a copy of my assessment records or my plan in assessing, and we made a copy of that for them and sent them on their way, we don't charge.
Would it be
25 cents a sheet.
Would it be easier to leave the first part that says $5 minimum, or then the second part that says no charge at under $5, if that's all there is?
I don't think you can do that yet. I know I've gone into assessing and I will get a
Jane clarified that a little bit. They're the only
Assessing
department
charges.
that does.
Yeah, 25 cents per side.
Yeah,
I
they're
give
the
it
only
to her.
department that does.
Yeah.
That's new. But anyway, normally we don't. You come in for a copy and that's maybe general tax or something.
We charge.
Maybe we're the only department that don't.
So is
Okay.
there a recommended amendment or just leave it as it is? Or?
Personally, it sounds like it's working.
Well,
It looks
and
confusing.
we'll look at it
It
internally.
definitely
because we
looks
should be-
confusing.
Can we add it to the item to look at better language the next time we come back with an amendment?
Or for staff
Thank
discussion.
you.
Okay, other discussion on the motion? If not, call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 21, consideration of the approval of the alarm services agreement. We have the recommendation from Ted.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. I have a verbal, more information verbally I wanted to give you as backup here. Again, you probably know that MMU gave us notice that their services for alarm monitoring will end January 1st. They did provide us with a list of providers that some do just fire alarms, some do security systems. I was contacted by both Heartland, who if there wasn't nothing done, we were automatically going to go with them. I also was contacted by Living Connected, who is a local company that kind of provides security systems as well, and also help with some of the fire alarm monitoring. This is does fall under the category of a professional service contract, where it's maybe not a simple bid. We're not required, because it's not a material supply or equipment, to formally get quotes on it. We could go that way if we wanted to. And, frankly, to begin with, I was going to have the plans to have a request for qualifications and do some formal interviews with all of the companies. As a matter of time, kind of went by, and so lost that opportunity. However, we did get a couple with those, in discussions with those two people, I did get a couple different price comparisons. There's a couple things that come into play. There's the fire alarm service and alarm service, which basically it's a monitoring service. So at the, as an example, at the Merit Center, we have an alarm on a sanitary sewer line where if it backs up, we get an alarm and somebody's called out. You have to pay somebody to monitor that. MMU's not doing it anymore. There are legal requirements and some software that has to be paid, so we can't just have this in-house. The dispatching won't do that as a fee-for-service. They'd have to spend a bunch of money that they're not willing to do. But when you compare just the service fee, Living Connected would be $133.70 per month for those items listed, and Heartland would be $127.30. So Heartland paper is $6.40 per month more expensive, or less expensive than Living Connected, the local company. However, there's a number of other things that come into play, such as upgrades to the security systems themselves. There's a number of different ways you could go with the types of telephone lines that you have. Like, you don't have to have a dedicated line anymore. For certain security systems, you can have an override depending on how critical it is that you have an open line. So when you factor those things, it's really pretty much a wash between the two, because they were both recommending different things. So again, what it comes down to is it's a matter of time and things. We need to make a change by January 1st, and in my discussions with both of those, I really felt that Living Connected was taking into consideration things that would save us money and basically spending more time to kind of work with us on it. Plus, it is the only local company as well that was on the list that could provide the service. They are subcontracting the fire monitoring work with a company that is currently doing some of the systems checks for us anyway, and that company is Hometown Fire out of Spicer, Minnesota. And I haven't had a chance to research exactly what all they're doing for checks. I'm thinking some of the systems might need to have some maintenance checks on them, because when Living Connected went into some of the batteries were dead on some of our systems and things. So it's good to work with a company that also keeps us in mind for those kinds of things. So with that, I guess I am recommending that, at least for now, that we hire Living Connected with the agreements that are proposed for both the service agreements as well as the system programming changes for the panels that are listed in the council packets. I'm not sure, I did ask Dennis kind of at the last minute to take a quick look at the the terms and conditions on the back of the program. Sometimes the devil's on the details on some of these vendor requirements, and so unless there's something that really jumps out as a major problem, I guess we could maybe look for them to strike any provisions that are major concern, but as a local company, I feel at least a little more comfortable hopefully that we wouldn't be surprised by anything there. But with that, I'd recommend that we move ahead with Living Connected. If in the future we decide to look at a change, I think we can go ahead and do that, but I feel good about working with this company going forward. In my mind, the fees are a little hard to look at, you know, unless we actually hired a company to build engineering specs to make them apples to apples, it would be difficult to get an actual, at this point, comparison.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Mike, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question about why would the city of Marshall want to have monitoring services on the Marshall Transit Building? We don't own it.
I guess that's one where we have it now, and I didn't sent it out to the departments for feedback. Do we build that back to them anymore, or is that part of the operating cost?
But this is one that I had a question on also. I was thinking that it should be a way of community action.
Yes, I don't think it should be in here at all, either under the programming changes or the monthly monitoring.
But that should be communicated though to Western Community Action that they need to.
Yeah, because when we got the original letters from MMU, those letters were forwarded on to them, so I don't know if they've been looking at anything on their own or what they've been doing over there.
I'll get in contact with them. I think we can pull that one off. And I'll need to verify this with Living Connected, but I don't think it's contingent upon all of these being included on their price, because we were debating whether or not to do the swimming pool security system, and ultimately we decided to keep it in place, but the price would have been the same whether we had them or not. And that one's just, we've had break-ins. And if we get into too many security discussions, like the liquor store, I might want to go into a closed meeting at a future time, which we can. The swimming pool I'm not too concerned with, but that one, my understanding was it was set up because we had some break-ins into the building, and so they have a monitoring alarm where if there's certain triggers of somebody breaking in, then the police are called out to the building. But as a seasonal place where there's maybe limited amount of money for most of the year, kind of for candy, I think is what we thought maybe kids were breaking into. We kind of debated, is it worth spending the money or not? But ultimately, the community services recommended leaving it in place.
Other questions?
I guess we've just had a few minutes to look at it, like approval subject to or contingent upon final review and approval.
Okay. With the understanding that the Marshall Transit Building is going to, the responsibility for that alarm monitoring is going to go to the building's owner, I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we go forward with Living Connected upon approval, once everything is documented and also Western Community Action is removed or they become responsible for their share.
Motion, and Dan had seconded that motion. Motion by Larry, seconded by Dan. Discussion on the motion?
Yeah, the clarification, Larry, is we're eliminating transit.
Eliminating the transit and having the
Either he
city
said-
attorney finalize.
I think he said he's either eliminated or if they agree to pay us back for it.
Why would we want to start doing this for someone else and then pay their bill and collect it from them? Just ignore it. I mean, if they want it, they want it. Let them
I'll
pay.
remove it.
Including hometown as well.
That's included, yes.
And it- Okay, that motion's been clarified by the maker of the motion and the
Thank you.
seconder of the motion. Other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 22, consider the 2009 regular city council dates, time, and location. And of course, the significant item here is that both the date and the location would are proposed to be changed, the date being the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, and the location being the boardroom at Marshall Public Schools, the administration office at the middle school. Ben?
That is correct. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. Again, this had been discussed throughout the budget process with concerns related to this facility as far as the needs for problems with the acoustics in this room, the handicap accessibility that was not accessible, even with the elevator improvements, it's not technically handicap accessible, sound system issues, and just kind of the general feeling that it's probably not worth spending the money to upgrade this room to the level that it needs to, at least in the foreseeable future, particularly when the middle school site was available, at least for now, at no cost, according to the school, they committed to that. And so we can upgrade our technology basically without having to expend any real money on it. We did take a look at that facility. With that, the schedules included, there were really no substantial impacts of any other committee meetings that I can think of that on our review. Our intention, I'll be laying out some of the details as far as, I would anticipate that we would still have packets going out on Fridays before the weekend, even though we're pushing it back a day. We might have a procedure that we put in place that maybe by a certain time on Monday, we send out one email on if there's any changes, but we don't want to completely confuse you by sending out a bunch of changes all the time either. So we'll be formalizing that. Additionally, I don't have a formal plan right now, but getting this word out to the public, I think, is appreciated, that's important to do that. I think when you look from a marketing perspective or communication, people get their sources of information from all different areas. So we probably look at, obviously, the newspaper, either if they would voluntarily do an article specifically about it. I know they did do one article already that talked about it, but maybe formalizing that it would be approved tonight. And if not, then maybe we would take out an advertisement with them. The radio station, I think, like if I do a show, I'll talk about it and ask Aaron Zemer to maybe run a little ad on that. Our city web portal that's new, we put a notice on that web page. My understanding was gomarshall.net. Sometimes we'll do notices like this at no charge. We contact them. And then we would probably also post something on our front door for a period of time, particularly on nights we normally have our meetings. And hopefully with that and word of mouth, it'll spread a lot. And then just, our regular notices will now show the new date and time and location. We might need to print up a little map or something too for people that people generally know in the middle school. So that's kind of the marketing piece. I also had a question about whether they have any rules over there. The school does not have any formal rules we would have to abide by, but they said, we've been talking about it for a while, so maybe we ought to do it now. My guess is it would be things like we have to have the chairs set up a certain way when we're done with the meeting. So if we rearrange it, we probably have to put it back the way that they want it. And if we make a big mess, it might say we have to help clean it up. But I'm not looking at any real major rule items that we would have related to that either. So anyway, with that, that's my summary. I'd recommend approval, as we talked about in the past, with the meeting schedule, adopting that for 2009. Again, we would not be doing anything with this facility for the time being, so that if something comes up, we can come back here to hold a meeting if we need to, but that we would be looking to schedule our regular meetings there to at least a trial basis to see how it goes for setting the schedule for 2009.
Questions?
Well, there's one obvious advantage to switching, and that's we're not changing the date of 3 or 4 city council meetings as we have every year for the past umpteen years, Labor Day, Memorial Week, that type of thing.
Any other
questions? Just say, you might consider running on the cable, on the real LDCast, so whenever they're not running programs, it'd be replayed about every 15 minutes.
I did talk to Harry, and he said he would do that too.
Okay.
Very good. Any other discussion?
I recommend approval for the change in the city council location and times of meetings. Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. Discussion? Not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. And so that would mean our next regular council meeting will be on January 13th.
Yes, although you'll be getting an email soon. We're probably going to have a couple hospital meetings in January at least. Probably January 5th is one to pencil on your schedule, and if that's a conflict, let me know. So we will be meeting prior to that, but we will have some time here, and we might be calling some committee meetings on the in-between periods too, since we get a chance there. So
Yeah, that is a long stretch without seeing everyone.
It's not a bad idea.
Agenda item number 23, unless, was there anything else on that that you had, Ben? Agenda item number 23 is appointment of council member liaisons to boards and commissions. As I indicated last time, given that we're dealing with the same council and no change in the council, it was my intent to make no changes to the committee appointments unless someone objected to that. I haven't heard of any of that. So I will make the appointments to the council committees and the liaisons to the boards and commissions. I will add one, however, and that was by prior action, the regional radio board will list that I'm serving as that representative, and then Charlie is the alternate representative. Okay? I don't think we need any action on that. So, agenda item number 24 is the selection of the president pro tem by the council. As the council knows, is established by charter that the president pro tem is selected by a election of the council. So I would entertain a motion for a nomination for president pro tem.
Make a nomination for Mike Bonner.
Okay, is there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, I would entertain a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Mike Bodenheimer as president pro tem of the council. Want to make that motion?
Make a motion to do that.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Congratulations, Mike. Agenda item number 25, council member and commission board liaison reports. The EDA did meet since our last meeting. One of the major items was actually taken care of, that being the CRIF loan review and application. Mike?
Yes, we had a budget meeting when we had the airport commission meeting last Monday night, so I'd like Glenn to bounce on that one a little bit. I believe there were a couple of items.
Yes, we had a good discussion of the potential scheduled air service. Airport Commission discussed and recommended that we keep the options open, one with Sovereign Air, the other with Great Lakes. Aviation, Great Lakes is out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Both of those have given proposals for essential air service from Brookings. And a decision has not been made at this time by the FAA for that. So we want to keep that open. We've sent the proposals that we had provided to Midwest Aviation earlier to both companies. We've given them the Mead and Hunt study, both companies the Mead and Hunt study, for them to make their reviews. I was in contact with Great Lakes on Friday and again today that we will be meeting to discuss the conditions of that contract. So as of this time, we're just doing a wait and see. They said that they have some deciding some decisions from the FAA before the end of the year. That only though brings the EAS guarantee to October of 2009. So everyone's kind of on pins and needles about what could happen, that you'd have essential air service for 9 months of a year, and then all of a sudden the funding disappears and you lose your carrier. So that's the kind of discussions that we had. We also had some discussions about operations at the airport with UPS. We've made some contacts as far as what UPS long-term plans are. Long-term plans are tough these days. Short-term plans are they have leased space at the veterinary clinic out east on 19 to do their sorting and moving their packages around. They will send one truck to the airport to pick up the packages and then take them out to that site for sorting. So that takes care of a lot of the concern that we had about trucks on the ramp space. We had, again, good discussion about the CRIF loan recommendations. You saw a copy of the memorandum that fully supported that, and Airport Commission fully supporting the business of Midwest aviation within the community and the region. It's a big regional facility for us and our fixed base operator as well that provides us with services, including the fuel service that we used to have and the liability that we used to take with it. So lots of discussion this time and lots of things still left to do, but like any other items? No. Okay.
I have nothing.
Okay, Larry?
Marsh Community Services met. I had to leave early because we had a budget meeting that night. But the part that I was there for, she did a presentation on bike and walking trails in the cities, how that's going to tie the schools and the college and some of the downtown businesses into a means accessible by either bike or on foot. And I left.
Mike?
Hospital board was in progress. I had to leave that to come to this. They were just getting into some agenda items that were following up. Just some discussion on the retreat we had back in October, so I'm sure some of that will be reflected in their upcoming notes.
Ed?
Nothing.
And Charlie?
No.
Okay. And then item number 26 is staff report to the administrator.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the City Council. I'd like to first start with the memorandum that's included on page 26 on the bottom right. I know we've all seen this once, but I am recommending, in light of some of the pending state LGA cuts and immediate changes. Again, just a verbal summary, and I've been forwarding some of this information to you as it's come in, but the state budget deficit for payable 09 is $426 million as of the last press conference that was completed by the state. They're projecting in 010 and 011 that this is going to be a sustained problem, somewhere between $946 million and $4.8 billion that they're looking at a shortfall. Some projections I've heard now that are even pushing to get above that $4.8 billion. So you've probably been reading some of the headlines in the state that they're looking at substantial reductions, not only this year, but looking at changing a lot of the way that they do things and funding going forward. So it'll be definitely an interesting time to see how they proceed with that. To put it in perspective, in 2003, the state faced a $4.2 billion shortfall. However, they utilized a lot of additional rainy day funds that they had available at that time, plus the tobacco settlement, along with some other cuts. So just to put it in perspective, and they're looking at this to be more of a sustained problem than the last time around in 2003. With that, the 2008 second half payment in local government aid that we are projected to get for all cities would be $242 million that's scheduled to go out by December 26th. The governor does hold the authority, if he spends down the rainy day fund reserves that the state has, which his intention is to do that, he could unallot or basically take back spending that the state has scheduled before the end of the month, which would include local government aid payments to cities. Although it's pretty quiet as what the governor and the leaders of the Senate and House are negotiating currently as far as reductions, the League of Minnesota Cities sent out an email that I had forwarded on to you this weekend that's projecting somewhere between 9% and 35% reduction in that aid payment that's scheduled for all cities, which would equate to $25 million to $100 million in a reduction for those aid payments. It would be they're suggesting that it wouldn't be a straight across the board percentage decrease for cities. It would run into the formula. So the league ran a formula projection based on those reductions, which would mean the city of Marshall would face we're scheduled to get a payment of $1,240,000, $657, which is half of our annual payment by the end of the year, which is the monies that we budgeted and already planned and spent out. If that comes in as the league is projecting, we are looking at anywhere between, if I'm reading my handwriting right, $81,800 reduction on the low end of their projections, up to $435,500 just in the 08 monies that they would be taking back. So that's pretty substantial, and that's not even including the certified levy that they have for 09 that we have budgeted for. You might recall we did have planned, based on those certified local government aid increases, about a 7% increase for 09, which ends up being about $174,000. We could pretty much guess that at a minimum we're not going to see that increase. So we will be going back to the budget board probably shortly after the first of the year to try and manage some of that. So with that looming, I guess, a number of things that we're looking at implementing immediately. Previously, I had talked about having council authorization. However, I believe that with the exception of the wage schedule change, keeping it where it's at, I believe I have the executive authority to implement these without city council approval. One of those would be implementation of a hiring pause, where we would not immediately post and refill positions, but I would be reviewing those as they become available. We have one vacancy right now that has been held open that the division director is reviewing, that will be brought before me, but I would notify the council of any action prior to posting so that you would have the opportunity to choose not to do that. Secondly, prohibition of all out-of-state travel for conferences, training, and seminars, unless it's absolutely essential, but basically we're saying none. One person had contacted me and said, what if I get 100% of the travel and conference fees covered? So it's just my time away from work. And I said, I didn't know such a thing exists, but if it does, tell me where I can find out where that's done. But apparently there's a grant, and it's Rob Yant is actually applying for a grant for a public safety related item. And I said, well, if all of it's getting paid and it's just your time away from work, I don't myself see an issue with it. So I did put that as an exception. I don't think that's going to come up very often, though. He has not received it yet, but he's applied for a grant. He would still need to get travel approval to be gone out of state, make sure that it's something that the council supports. But the temporary restrictions of in-state conferences and training necessary for certifications of essential or priority importance. And some of those are going to be discretionary, but we're trying to, as much as possible, do local training or web-based training. I know this state, as an example, the police department has a number of certifications that they are, or education requirements that they have to stay certified. There are some web-based options that they can use to meet those requirements. We'd be looking, as an example, that they would be doing that rather than going to conferences. I will still expect some in-state travel necessary. In fact, I expect that legislative purposes, I might have to make sure that I get to these more than normal years because of so much volatility, so I might need to head up to St. Paul, but we'll try and keep you abreast of those. But as much as possible, we're trying to limit those, so some of those trainings that maybe aren't really essential we'll put a hold to under my review. And then last of all, pre-authorization of any capital outlay purchases or obligations that we have in the budget, adopted budget for 08, but they still have to get pre-approval prior to moving ahead with any of those. And a lot of times they do anyway, but that would be the last one. So those are the immediate actions that we're looking at taking. Certainly I would anticipate that to deal with at a minimum the 2008 reductions that we're likely to see. The city has acted responsibly and conservatively on some of their reserve funds, so certainly that would be a way to help finance it, at least on the short term. Long term, though, I think we're going to be paying very close attention to see how we might have to change things, what further reductions we might have to do to manage this going forward. And I don't have any formal actions now, but we've kind of started brainstorming different things now. Legislatively, I think now is a good time to think about any mandates that we have concern about. It's a good environment for potentially requesting the state to change mandates on us as cities. You know, a lot of times I think you'll see longer lists with the county as far as mandates go, more so than the city. But there are a number of things that I'll be working on, and with that, I think I'm not sure what the city's done as far as legislative priorities and sitting down with our legislators, but I'd like to sit down with Representative Seifert and also Senator Frederickson in the near future to maybe lay out some of our issues, find out what's happening, and then if there's other non-budgetary related items that we want to talk about, I think that's positive to do that. So I will work towards that or have discussions. If any of you have any opinions about what works well, but I'd probably do some brainstorming with staff. As a lead person on the council, I'd probably have discussions with the mayor and potentially involve him, but if you have any feedback on that, let me know, but we'd certainly keep you informed as far as any positions that we'd be taking on that. I did have, again, as I talked about, I called all the city employees together today and to inform them particularly about the hiring pause and the wage freeze. Again, we do still have step increases at this time that are implemented, so we are continuing with that, but that could be something that could change depending on how bad things get. But I did have invited all employees to a meeting this morning. We had about half of this room filled, and I'm sure the word spread to the others that didn't come. But you know, I think they were respectful and appreciated the opportunity to hear directly and understand what kind of times we're in economically, and they also follow news related to the statement. So we didn't call that. I didn't call that meeting together. We presented that today. The press isn't here tonight. I was expecting that we were probably going to have some headlines on it, but if they're not here, I guess maybe we won't have that tomorrow in the paper. So those are some of the local government aid tracking that's going on. With that, I would anticipate involving, I did ask Ways and Means today whether they thought they should be the main review on any proposed changes. However, there's substantial enough policy and operational impacts that we feel that probably a full budget work session is warranted to consider more different changes going forward. But for now, I think these are some good measures that we're implementing immediately and showing our responsibility and kind of preparing for these further reductions ahead of us. That's a pretty big topic. Is there any feedback in relation to this that you all have prior to me moving on to some of the other items?
Are you going to the rack, page 26?
I didn't plan on summarizing everything in my memo there, but beyond, if you're kind of questioning about the future items, I just kind of listed some of the bulleted items listed on there as far as things that cities are on kind of the checklist of things to do, to look at. As further reductions, I don't plan tonight to get into the details of those, but I listed some of those that I think we'll start immediately looking into. If you have any ideas or things you want me to specifically look into.
Yeah, I guess I'd like just hit on something here. And it's been discussed and tossed back and forth on greater cooperation with city departments. I think that's important, and I know it does happen, but I know in the wintertime, in fact, today it happened again. There's a city employee that has excess time on his hands, and this happens in the summer too with different things. I know that for a fact. And he goes, it's about 8:15 today, went over and plowed out a friend's driveway. And I'll discuss that with you at a later time. But I think that street department works good with the airport. I think there could be some better working relationships between the city departments on shared personnel and equipment year-round.
Well, with that, I won't get into any more details, but if you want to individually.
I just want to mention that.
Okay. That's all I had on that particular issue. Going back to other items, I wanted to report on a few things. One of the other things besides kind of we'll be doing a number of budget reporting, which I'll be leaning on Tom's department to assist with getting some of those submitted to the state following the final approval of the budget. So those will have to get turned in here. There's one form due by the end of the month, and then there's a few other ones I think we might have to do with that. We have pay equity reporting due at the end of January, so that'll be one of my priorities that I'll be working on shortly. And it's based on wages as of December 31st of 2008. So I'll be working with that. I believe that if we're in compliance, I believe I can submit the report without city council approval. However, if there are things that have to be implemented to become compliant, I will need the city council's action before I submit that report. So I would expect an update for you in probably the next meeting in January, at least a preliminary report of my findings. But I'll be working on that. I'll also be spending some time in between now and next meeting developing kind of a priority work plan for the upcoming year, and probably spending a little bit more time as far as, you know, whether we're going to have a work session or how we want to handle discussions of priority projects and kind of updating a pending list for us for the upcoming year. Projects that we're working on, certainly the economy and our budget things is going to get added to the list of items that we'll be working on, but there will be other projects that we'll still need to move ahead with. So we'll be working on getting that organized. The personnel policy is still a really big one out there that Sheila continues to work on, that we'll be calling that committee back together again for more information on that soon. She was not ready to commit to a timeline. She said some of the additional research is taking more time, so that's something she's continuing to work on, but I would guess that we'll be scheduling something in January there. The merit lease, I do have a draft ready to spend some time on, and now that I have some of this behind me, I think we'll be working on, I'll be working on formalizing that, and I would expect to have that at the next council meeting for review. And also coming up, since we're not going to be formally meeting for maybe a while, I believe that I have a performance review, my first performance review coming up soon in January, so I will pull out the former formats that you've used and probably work with.
You want to do that? Okay. Mike, as chair of the personnel committee, will work with you on that.
Okay, so I'll get that to Mike to take that under advisement. With that, I don't have any other updates for the city or administrators report.
Any questions for Ben? Thank you, Ben. Council member individual items, Larry?
None.
Charlie?
None.
Dan? Mike?
Just getting the L&O committee, we're not meeting, our next meeting until January 13th. I think we need, Dennis, you basically have all of those drafts ready to look at.
There's a couple things there. We'll have an update for the grass issue. One of the recommendations upon our review for the wind item that needs maybe direction is, since it impacts the zoning code for the wind, as well as potentially the kenneling item, there was some discussion from the city attorney and then with Glenn as well about whether we ought to have a joint meeting with the planning commission to discuss this, or whether there ought to be direction from L&O and then review by the planning and zoning. So that maybe we can talk to you. Are you the chairman of L&O, or is? So maybe we'll talk to you about that after the meeting sometime, if that's okay with you. If you're okay with that, then we can look at scheduling the meeting for the L&O.
It's Charlie, Jenny, and
okay.
I've got one I missed, Glenn, on the whistles with the railroad.
He hasn't scheduled the meeting yet.
Yes.
It is the BM that we're waiting for getting the schedule when he was going to come to Marshallton.
Visit.
Yeah. But it is on the, it is on the radar.
Anything else, Mike? Mike? Let's move on then to review of the pending agenda items. Any questions on the pending agenda items? I would just say also even outside of the pending agenda items, we have interviews for boards and commissions, and we continue to have some openings, including planning commissions. So we may be able to do those interviews in conjunction with a meeting that might happen prior to January 13th.
Okay, so. And there's one other big one I wanted to update too before.
Okay, pending agenda items or other issues?
Well, it's kind of just one of them's informational memo in here about we submitted a couple of federal funding requests because of the stimulus package that the president has talked about as far as looking at capital infrastructure, our nation's roads and bridges. As part of his stimulus package concept is that he uses that to put people to work, to stimulate the economy, and it also includes buildings, such as he specifically talked about schools and some other ones. And we happen to have Ed King as our lobbyist on behalf of both the highway transportation item related to Highway 23 as well as our Barrett Center. He brought up that we had a very short timeline to give him something on it, the suggestion that we should submit something to the federal government related to those projects because they might get basically federally earmarked if we submit something in. So the Barrett Center's portion is included in a memorandum that summarizes a request that threw in an expansion of the building for offices that Midwest and MUA would utilize, as well as a potential driving course that was in their master plan across potentially across the road. I guess that would have to be a discussion about that property where we talked about stormwater issues. But for the detail, you might want to take a look there. We did also submit a request related to some of the local Highway 23 projects that we have ready to go. Part of their stipulations on taking these requests is that there wouldn't be a lot of lag between federal approval and then implementation, because they didn't want a project that takes 2 years to plan. They wanted something that could go fairly quickly. And Glenn might want to comment briefly on those local highway projects that we did submit as well, in addition to the Barrett ones. So I wanted to make you aware that those did go in, and I just simply forgot to mention.
And these are the projects that you're all aware of. It is a little bit different package. I did talk with Tom Beam, the state aid engineer here, in that these federal projects would be 100% funded. The local funding would be the development of the plans and specifications if outside of the contract timeline. And we'll be getting something back to you on that if there's potential for that kind of funding. The state funding as well, we talked about the MnDOT projected project for 2010 from Amaret Street just north of the high school all the way to Russell, a $20 million project. Of trying to suggest that we split out the section from Amaret Street to Trunk Highway 19 that include the pedestrian underpass. And if in fact, and he thought that is a possibility, and if in fact that's a possibility, we have to have the plans and specs in place. So it could be a 2009, 2010 project. So there's a lot of things that are completely up in the air from both the federal perspective and the state perspective, and what our participation level would be, and when we would have to have those plans on the board. So we're working hard on trying to get the answers for that before we bring it to you. But just so you know, those projects that you are aware of along the highway have been included in potential incentive projects.
And I don't know how likely, I mean, it might be a shot in the dark, but we kind of felt like these have been discussed as items potentially for the city, so why not take a shot at it? Because if it doesn't come here, it could very well go to another city. So we felt they were priorities to submit in.
Thank you. Any comments on the pending agenda items? Okay, then we'll move to agenda item 29. This would be to determine by the City Council to go into closed session